Another great show on tap for today's Philadelphia 76ers now, but first, you see these numbers here to my right? We're 30 people away from 14,000 subscribers. And let me ask you something before we get this show underway. Do you want informative, entertaining, insightful Sixers news, rumors, analysis, live shows, and watch parties? Then this is the go-to spot for you. Can we get to 14K with this video alone? I'm challenging all Sixers fans right now. And with that, let's chop it up and talk some Sixers. Could the Sixers go after Paul George this offseason? That's what we're talking about on today's Philadelphia 76ers Now by Chat Sports. I'm Chase Sr. Glad all of you are rocking here with us. NBA on TNT insider Chris Haynes said the Sixers want to pursue Paul George this offseason. Here's a direct quote and report from insider Chris Haynes that if Paul George and the Clippers are unable to get an extension done, look for the Sixers to be very aggressive in trying to pursue him in the offseason. Paul George will definitely be a target for the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, this will get a lot of people excited for a multitude of reasons. Paul George is a two-way player who can lock down some of the best players in the NBA, even at his age with the mileage on the tires, and he's also a very, very good three-level offensive player who can get to the rack. He can settle in the mid-range. He can knock down some threes. And in the playoffs, I know that at points he struggled in his playoff career. He's also come up big on the big stage in his postseason career. This year in 48 games played, injuries also always a concern. The number's pretty solid on what is a loaded Clippers team. Shots are being taken away, Paul George, because James Harden and Kawhi Leonard and Russell Westbrook are all on that squad. You add in the likes of Terrence Mann. It's a very good team, yet Paul George still averaging 22.5 points per game. And I love the shooting splits. 46% from the floor, 40% from downtown. And in the last 4 years, you've seen that steady offensive production really remain the same, with the shooting efficiency numbers also being very solid. As for his contract situation, signed a 4-year, $176 million deal with the Clippers back in 2020. He's expected to decline the $48 million player option this offseason. And these contract talks between him and the Clippers, Steve Ballmer, Lawrence Frank, they haven't progressed. So that has opened up the door, opened up an avenue for Paul George maybe to go elsewhere. And for Philadelphia's sake, we know that they have maintained the draft capital as well as the financial capital to maybe make an all-season splash after this year. And could that splash be for Paul George? You see what we're doing here? We're tying everything together. There's also a conversation that Paul George had with reporters. Paul George was asked if the goal for him and the Clippers is to reach an extension. PG said, that's the goal. Has there been any update? That's the goal. So keeping it coy has PG-13. So when you think about all of these rumors and this report from Chris Haynes, Philadelphia would love to land a player like this who's a better two-way player than Zach LaVine, more expensive than Zach LaVine. But Zach LaVine also has the injury issues to a certain degree that Paul George has, and the big game experience. Paul George has simply played in a lot more playoff games as compared to Zach LaVine. It's also interesting to note that the Clippers signed Kawhi Leonard to a contract extension last month. And George says he wants something similar to Kawhi's extension. What is that Kawhi extension? Of course we have you covered, because producer Chip, one of the best in the game. This year, or next year, 2024-2025, $49.3 million for Kawhi Leonard once that contract comes into play. And then the following year, up to 50. 2026-2027, $50.3 million. There is something to be said that once the Clippers move away from Crypto.com Arena, formerly known as the Staples Center, they're going to build their new lavish arena. And Steve Ballmer wants to have as much fan interest as possible to have that team be a winner and have that team be loaded with some marquee superstars. So they might be doing everything that they can do in order to stack that roster with the likes of Kawhi, as well as Paul George. Something, of course, to think about here. Now, Paul George already, man, is going to turn 37 years old in 2027. So does LA at that point want to pay him $50 million. I'll tell you this, that makes me feel old because when Paul George was a young pup playing for the Indiana Pacers, I remember those days like they were yesterday, and now we're talking about him in 2027 already being 37 years old. With that, this is today's poll question. It'll also be the pinned comment on our video here today. So let us know what you're thinking about this. Would you sign Paul George this offseason? S for sign, P for pass. Coming up next, specifically, how can the Sixers ink Paul George to a contract extension if he were to leave the Los Angeles Clippers? Stay tuned for that. But first, how about this deal? Thanks to our friends at Fanatics, we still link up with Michael Rubin from time to time, even though he's not a Sixers minority owner any longer. This Sixers hoodie, which is awesome. Chip and I saw it. We said, we got to plug this on the show because we ordered it for ourselves. Was $90. Now it is only $54. But you can only get that deal if you use that link right below me. It's chatsports.com/Sixers hoodie. You use that link. You also know that Fanatics knows that Chat Sports and 76ers now sent you. So if you want to look fresh like producer Chip and I in this Sixers hoodie, we put that link down below in the comment section as well as in the description and show notes of this video, chatsports.com/Sixers hoodie. How can Philadelphia sign Paul George? Let's get to that aspect of this talking point here. The projected cap space for next year. Oh boy, I'm very excited about this because I just want to see the Sixers make it past the second round of the playoffs, and I want to see them have a loaded roster around the blossoming star that is Tyrese Maxey and a healthy Joel Embiid. Philadelphia, ladies and gentlemen, we haven't been able to say this in a long time, number one in projected cap space going into next offseason. $76.8 million. Paul George, you want to come to Philadelphia where fans actually care about basketball? LeBron James, you want to come to a city that doesn't have fans that sometimes show up and are fair weather fans like Laker fans? Come to Philadelphia. $76.8 million. That's a lot of money that the Sixers can have at their disposal to pay a marquee star. And for a star player, they might want to go to Philadelphia. Great fan experience. Really good team in place over the dog shit Detroit Pistons. Sorry, Jake Riepma. The Orlando Magic, the Toronto Raptors, and the Utah Jazz. Among these five teams, there's no doubt that Philadelphia is better equipped to try to bring home the Larry O.B. than any of these teams right here. And only Embiid and Paul Reed, this is pretty wild, are under contract going into next year. Now, Philadelphia's going to have to use a portion of those dollars to pay Tyrese Maxey, but he is going to be a restricted free agent. So, like the Paul Reed situation, another team can offer Tyrese Maxey a deal, the Sixers can match it, and then pay him even more. Restricted free agents for Philadelphia, you have Tyrese Maxey, Ricky Council, who cares, Kenny Lofton, who cares, and Turk Swift, who I did really like in the NBA Summer League. Philadelphia can go over the salary cap to sign Maxey. That is a possibility. And then they could look to sign Paul George as well, and they could actually do that first. Paul George, his expected contract, when you look at the projections, when we rack our mathematical and financial brains, 3 years, $130 million. That checks in at $43 million on the average annual value. That leaves Philadelphia with about $30 million. You give that to Maxey, you fill out the rest of the roster. You can also go above the luxury tax to a certain degree with Maxey. And then you look at some of the Sixers' unrestricted free agents. You sign Paul George, you re-sign Maxey, you're already paying the max to Joel Embiid. You probably say bye-bye to Tobias Harris, Buddy Hield, Nicholas Batum, Robert Covington, D'Anthony Melton, Kelly Oubre, Cam Payne, Mo Bamba, KJ Martin. Those are 9 players total who were unrestricted free agents on this Sixers roster here. And this is why Philadelphia has tried to field a winner right now, because they understand if Embiid comes back, they can win an NBA championship right now. But also they're maintaining that flexibility, which is classic Daryl Morey. Now, what I would do and what producer Chip would do if, like, I'm Daryl Morey and he's Elton Brand, or if he's Daryl Morey and I'm Elton Brand, little two-man front office combo, we like bringing back Hield, Batum, and Melton. If affordable, Oubre off the bench, Cam Payne, little wiggle as a backup point guard. After that, you sign vets to minimum deals, and then you re-sign Maxey, Council, and Turk Smith. And Terquavion Smith, I think, could be a back end of the rotation type of player in 2024, 2025. So then your potential starting five would be Tyrese Maxey, DeAnthony Melton, Paul George, Batum, as well as Joel Embiid. Like, that's a pretty good starting five right there, where you have really a combination of good defensive players, really all across the board here, and then everybody could put the biscuit in the basket and find twine. Would the Sixers be championship favorites with Paul George? I'm going to say championship contenders, but not championship favorites. So I'm going to go N for no here, but you let me know down below in the comment section and join that conversation with fellow Sixers fans and debate it if you want before we hop on out of here. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I'm Chase Sr., producer Chip on the ones and twos. You've seen him doing a lot of short-form content on the YouTube Shorts page. Check him out, what he's doing there. It's a two-man combo here on 76ers Now, and you can't beat it.